Hi, I'm Stephen Heverin, and I'm a Senior Technical Account Manager at AWS, and I am based out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Welcome to AWS Supports You, where AWS support experts provide tips to optimize performance in the cloud, lower costs, and provide you with the best practices and design considerations. Joining me today is Parajat from AWS Support. Can you give us a quick introduction?
Sure, Stephen. Hello, everyone. My name is Parijat. I am the Senior Product Manager for AWS CloudFormation StackSets. Really excited to be on the call today. I'm calling in from Seattle. As you can see behind, it's nice and I won't like to say it's sunny out there, but excited to be on the call to talk about our products and run you guys through a demo today. Thank you, Stephen, for the introduction.
Great, thanks. Today we'll be introducing you to CloudFormation StackSets. We'll specifically focus on deploying a disaster recovery solution with CloudFormation StackSets. Before we get into the details, a quick note to the attendees online. Use the chat window on the right-hand side on your screen to let us know where you're joining us from today. Please share your thoughts and questions throughout the episode. We look forward to hearing from you. We will provide a link to our survey, letting us know how we did, and click the link to leave your feedback. Parajat, take it away.
Thank you, Stephen. Alrighty, let's start. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode. We have a jam-packed episode today. Before we begin, let me just run us through the agenda. So how we have kind of divided today's episode is like we have three major parts. The first part, I'll be explaining what is CloudFormation and explain the intricate use cases of our product, as well as running through some customer stories and some key concepts about CloudFormation. The second part of the agenda today is just running through a demo. Today, we will learn how to set up a disaster recovery for your entire organization, AWS organizations. And it's a very interesting use case where we will see how cross-account monitoring really works and how you can set up that kind of a backup architecture using CloudFormation stacks and StackSets. And finally, the third part of today's episode would be the 2020 launches. These are, again, just a few of the major launches that we have done this year as part of CloudFormation, CDK, as well as Cloud Control API. And if we have a few minutes, we'll definitely take some Q&A. So super excited to be here to talk about our products. Let's go to the next episode. So next slide. All right, so what is AWS CloudFormation? So at the basics of it, AWS CloudFormation is one of the major IAC tools provided by AWS, which enables our customers to really model, provision, and manage their cloud application infrastructure in a safe, predictable, and repeatable way. And I guess the first question that comes to anybody's mind is, what is IAC, right? So IAC is nothing but infrastructure as code. So today, if you are on AWS, whenever you're trying to set up your architecture, you can either do it, or one of the ways you can do it is you do it manually. You can go to the console, set up your EC2, set up different properties for your cloud resources, the infrastructure, and how do they map each other, and so on and so forth. And that is one way to set up your entire application, your microservice in the cloud. And the other popular way that we advocate for is using infrastructure as code, which is modeling and provisioning the same architecture, but using the CloudFormation JSON and YAML templates to define how that architecture will be really set up, and allowing CloudFormation to do that provisioning in a repeatable, safe, and predictable manner. And that is like the big picture of what CloudFormation is. Today, we have millions of active customers managing their entire applications using our product. We do have about like 20 million plus CloudFormation stacks. These are managed by our customers. And today in our product, you can provision almost 900 plus resources, both AWS and third party, using our products. And really excited to talk about like different ways on how to actually use our product. So before we talk about like the CloudFormation workflows and what really goes under the hood, let me talk about like a very amazing customer story that we have with GoDaddy today. There is a link on the comment that Stephen will just post right now. But basically, GoDaddy has been using AWS CloudFormation to automate their entire multi-account landing zone. As you can see on the image on the right bottom, we have like a very complex organization structure for GoDaddy. And it becomes very complicated to manage all of these resources within each of these intricate organization units, your accounts, your multi-region. And CloudFormation really helps orchestrate all of that, whether it be setting up governance policy or maybe perhaps bootstrapping and baselining accounts, to even something such as setting up disaster recoveries. That is something that we'll explore today in our episode. And also like maybe perhaps deploying a multi-account, multi-region data collection system that allows you to understand the usage of the different resources that are spread out across your organization. So within this use case, GoDaddy definitely used a bunch of AWS services, and the blog kind of talks about their cloud strategy as a whole, and also like alludes to the fact that how CloudFormation really helped in this cloud strategy journey for GoDaddy. So really happy to have them as our great customer. Moving to the next slide, and this is where I think things get a little more interesting, is like what happens really like when you're creating these cloud formation, right? Like when you're creating this template, what really happens under the hood. So at the highest level, right, the template, what it does, or when you're creating a cloud formation template, that it kind of defines the state of all of your resources. It explains what are the properties of these resources, how do they configure, how do you want them to deploy, whether if there are dependencies between these resources when it comes to mapping. And what the customers really do is that they define this kind of configuration and this state of this final infrastructure using the JSON and YAML template. And what CloudFormation does is, first of all, it understands these different configuration and different properties that the customer really wants by digesting that template and basically going and hitting on these services, the individual APIs of these services, and provisioning the resources with the correct properties. And that's what really happens, right? So as a customer, all you have to do is create that JSON and YAML template. And what CloudFormation would do is it will translate that intention into API calls and provide that abstraction as a singular stack, which will be deployed to your AWS account and region. And we'll get a little deeper into what stacks are and stack sets, as well as what are templates as we go through our slide today. But that's kind of like the basic workflow of when a customer is really provisioning their cloud infrastructure through CloudFormation. If I go to the next slide, so we have a few key concepts. These are, again, there are a lot of cloud concepts when you join CloudFormation, but these are the very basic key concepts that will help you get started. And these are very powerful concepts because they kind of define the entire product itself and how customers really interact with our products. A few of these key concepts, we'll definitely explore them deeper as we go through our presentation today. But if I just look at it, the 5 key concepts that I want to talk about today is template, registry, stacks, stack sets, and chain sets. So a template is nothing but the simple code or the simple JSON and YAML code that helps kind of allows our customers to describe their resources, attributes, any sort of dependencies, and the final intent state of the infrastructure that the customer really wants to deploy. And that's what a template really is. And we'll see a few examples as we go through our slides. The registry, which is the second most key concept, it talks about all of the collection of resources, cloud resources, which are available in your AWS accounts. There are actually 3 types of interesting concepts within the registry. We have resource types, we have modules, we have hooks, and we'll see those as well as we go through our episode. And this brings us to the main point of CloudFormation, which is stacks and stack sets. So today, whenever like a customer like provisions a CloudFormation template and it deploys that template into an AWS account in a particular region, what CloudFormation really does is that it converts that template into this one singular unit called stack. And that stack really helps maintain the state of all of these resources that were defined in the template. Some interesting things about the stack that it's not only something that you create, but you can update, delete, and change the configuration of your stack once it is deployed into a particular account and region. And we'll look into in detail while we go through our demo how the stack technology really helps, especially when it comes to the disaster recovery piece that we'll be discussing later today, on how we can use stacks to like set up your backup or policy as a whole just with a singular template. And this brings me to the 4th point, which is StackSets. And what StackSets is that it takes the core capabilities of CloudFormation and really expands that capability into multi-account and multi-region. So with CloudFormation Stack, what customers can do is like whenever you're deploying a template to an account and a region, that creates a stack. But what StackSets does is that all the customer has to do is go to their management account, deploy the StackSets, select all the different AWS account and regions that they want to deploy particular template to, and that's what StackSet does. It is a single operation. It's really quick, it's really simple, and we'll learn today on how to deploy multiple StackSets, and we'll see how they actually like play a critical role in setting up multi-account or multi-region kind of solution within AWS Cloud. And then the final thing that we have, the 5th component or the key concepts, is that we have chain sets. So whenever you're done deploying a particular CloudFormation stack and you want to like update your stack, maybe perhaps add a resource, change the configuration of an existing resource. And before just deploying that, provisioning that new change and update to your stack, you want to visualize it, right? And that's what StackSet does. Sorry, ChainSet does. ChainSet helps our customers describe a plan, an execution plan, on how these changes will be implemented to your existing stack template before the provisioning really begins, right? So you can really see how each of the properties in the resource will really change when you're trying to update your particular stack, and changes really helps that. You'll see in details in a few workflows how they work as you continue through today's episode. Awesome. So these are a few things that I already talked about in the last slide. So like I was saying, template is nothing but a collection of resources, and this collection of resources is something that the user defines. Today, again, AWS CloudFormation supports almost over 900 plus types of both AWS and non-AWS third-party resources, such as New Relic, Databricks, and many more. We'll see a few of those examples as we go through today's slides. And what the template really helps the customer do is not only define the collection of resources that are required to be provisioned into a particular AWS account and region, but what it also does is it helps customer define the configuration of the resource property. It also helps describe certain dependencies such as hey, I want to deploy an IAM role into these accounts first. Before maybe deploying a KMS key and additionally other resources that I need, and that kind of the dependency of sequencing of order of different resources. And again, CloudFormation templates really help you do that using something called the depends on functionality that we have. And finally, these templates are written in JSON and YAML, and we support these languages today. So you have the freedom to write these templates in any way you want. On the right-hand side of this particular slide deck, we see pretty great example of how you can define, or at least how a customer is really trying to define perhaps a repository followed by creating a dev environment on Cloud9 using a CloudFormation template. And the best part about this is you can just copy this code and run it in your own systems, and you'll see that it perfectly works. So this is the example of what a template looks like. And it's a very easy tool. We have a lot of content created on the internet, so you can feel free to go through those. We have blogs on how to what are some of the best practices of working with CloudFormation templates. But moving on, I do want to talk about the registry, right? Because inherently what really happens is whenever a customer defines the template, right? I need these resources to be provisioned into my account. There needs to be some sort of a resource layer, right? Where the resources then get provisioned. So what CloudFormation registry does is we offer three major types. So we have resource types, we have modules, and we have hooks. So what a resource type really is that it allows customers to provision any sort of third-party resources that they want through the custom resource feature. So you might have certain resources in your own local systems that you want to deploy, and the resource type, which is basically custom resources, helps you deploy all of that third-party resources, and CloudFormation would consume and provision those resources the way it would do with any other default offerings. CloudFormation modules, what it really does is that it helps our customers package resource configurations as a reusable building block. And the big picture, the big idea with this with CloudFormation modules is that most of the time, whenever we are orchestrating infrastructure, there are a lot of workflows and a lot of processes that are repeatable in nature, right? So why don't we create some sort of a reusable building block that we can easily cut and paste as we try to deploy our infrastructure depending on certain use cases. So I might want to perhaps set up a disaster recovery solution, or perhaps I might want to set up certain governance policies depending on the type of business that particular application is placed at, or even have certain rules depending on the region that particular application is deployed at. And modules, what it helps that our customers do is define these configurations as packages, and then you can use packages and configure and build them as you like a building block. And this brings me to the last and the third piece of the registry, which is hooks. And what hooks really does is it acts as a preventative control for our customers, so customers can proactively inspect the configuration of their AWS resources before provisioning, and We have follow-up episodes coming more on hooks and guard, where my colleague Abu would talk more about these products. But really exciting things that we launched. Hooks is something that we launched this year in the month of February. So really excited to talk more about those products in successive episodes. Um, this brings us to stacks. And finally, again, the stacks, again, going back to what we were discussing in the key concepts slide, is that what a stack does is whenever the user has created some sort of a CloudFormation template, and then you try to deploy this template using our technology, what CloudFormation would do is it will digest a template, right? And it will hit those APIs for those resources and start provisioning them. But on the layer of CloudFormation, how we kind of map and group all of these resources or this collection as a single unit, that unit is called stacks, right? So whenever a customer like deploys a template into an account and region, what CloudFormation does is creates a stack, and this stack is the representation of a single unit of all the collection of resources. So as a customer, you can not only create stacks, but you can list what are all the resources within your stack. You can help describe the stack, update it, delete it, and do a lot of interesting things with the stack tech. And inherently, what the stack does is that it kind of maintains all the resources. It maintains the status of all the resources within a stack, and it really helps group all of them together. And the stack sets, again, what it does is it expands the code capacity of CloudFormation stacks, and it helps customer create, update, or delete stacks across multiple account and region. We will see a real use case in our demo today as we go through today's episode. And this is change set. Again, something that we already talked about in our previous slides. But if you look at the workflow here in front of us, this is what change set really does. So whenever you have an original stack template, you are trying to create an update. What change set does, it first of all sees what are the updates that the customers really try to make, and then provides that visibility that, hey, here are the updates that you're trying to make. These is how your updates will be impacted. And if the customer gives a green signal saying that, hey, yeah, go ahead and update, then changes will go and update that particular CloudFormation stack for the customer. So it not only changes helps customer view the proposed changes to a stack before running it or executing those resources, but it also provides a sort of a guardrail so that CloudFormation does not go and update your stack, and then the customer has to give us permission saying that, hey, yeah, everything looks good, go ahead and proceed, and CloudFormation will go and execute that change set. And that is it when it comes to the introduction. I hope you guys had fun learning about our product. This is again a very brief introduction. Obviously, our product is far more comprehensive, and today we'll be walking through a demo. And the demo, I believe, will help clarify a lot of these use cases and a lot of these key concepts that we have talked about. So we will actually get to see like how a template is created in our demo, and we'll try to create a template. We'll also try to invoke certain custom resources in our registry when we are trying to set up the backup policy for our organization. We will also be working with stacks, and the stack would itself be the backup policy. We'll also be deploying some stack sets that will help define like certain IAM roles, KMS key, backup vault, and we'll see the extensive use of all of these key concepts that we discussed in the slides before. So yeah, let's start the demo of today's episode, and I'm really excited to talk about this demo. So the high-level use case of today's demo, as you can see, is that we're trying to create we're trying to set up a disaster recovery for our entire AWS organization. And the image on the right that we see on this slide kind of talks about what we're trying to deploy. So as you can see, we have a simple example of an AWS organization that has multiple OUs. OU meaning organization units. And each of these OUs that I see, we have a prod OU, which is our production OU. We have a staging OU, and we have a central backup OU. And these are the three OUs that will be interacting with each other. Within these organization units, we have a bunch of AWS accounts. These accounts could be located in different regions. They don't have to be singular region. But what the end goal of this demo is, once we set up the entire architecture, it really doesn't matter where these AWS accounts are. Any resources that are there provision within these AWS accounts under these OUs, they will be automatically backed up as long as those resources have the same parameter values that we set up during our demo today. And we'll be talking more about parameters as we go through the demo, but that's kind of like the big picture. The big picture, the high level of what we're trying to really achieve today is we're trying to automate a centralized backup at scale across AWS organization. And we're trying to implement backup policy as a code. With the end goal obviously being is to scale data protection strategy, reduce any sort of overhead, and manage organization-wide backup policies. And we will see how effective CloudFormation is and how simple it is to set up something as complex as disaster recovery with a few simple steps. this brings us to the last slide, and then we'll directly go from here to the demo. So before we get into the demo, let me just talk about the 5 steps to disaster recovery. I call them the 5 steps. We can definitely reduce it into 3 steps or even 1 step. But for the greater understanding of how everything is actually working, I think 5 steps are a very effective way. So the first step, what we'll do is we'll just work with AWS Backup Service. What we'll just try to opt into their cross account management feature and the cross regional backup features, which would be us working on AWS backup. But after that, the last 4 steps is where we'll be using CloudFormation. So the first, the second, the third, and the fourth step involves us deploying StackSets. Each of the StackSets performs certain functionalities, and I'll be talking more about it as we go through the demo. And the final piece of this, the fifth step of disaster recovery will be just deploying a stack into our root organization unit or a root account. And that would contain the backup policy, right? The backup policy, which will help AWS backup understand, okay, how frequently do I want to back up certain resources, and all of those configuration abilities for an backup policy. So we'll just look through some basic examples of that. And finally, we'll see the demo work live of how when we start, there is no resource being backed up. And finally, when we set up our entire backup architecture, we will see all of our resources that are deployed to these production and staging OUs immediately be backed up using AWS backup. So yeah, we can move to the video section. Chris, awesome. Thank you. So as you can see here today, I am actually going to use an example of an existing blog. This blog was written a few years ago, but it is very much viable and applicable today. What we will be doing is not only will be following the procedures of the blog, but we will also be adding a twist to this, adding more things. Okay, so just like let's just look at the architecture here. Going back to what we were talking before, we have the similar architecture that I was presenting on the slides. Here we have a root organization unit, a root OU, a prod OU, and a staging OU, and then we have the central backup OU. Each of these OUs will have multiple AWS accounts. Each of these accounts could be in different regions. And what we will do is we will be following step by step. In first of all, setting up the automated backup, automated centralized backup for this AWS organization, and then after that we will be seeing, okay, the backup work in action. But before we go deeper into demo, let's look at the 5 steps back again. The first step would just be us going to AWS Backup to set up the cross account management features. Post which, what we'll do is we'll be deploying one stack set. And what this stack set does is it gives the IAM roles. It provides the IAM roles that allows AWS Backup Service to take control of that particular AWS account. And this particular IAM role will be deploying it to the prod and the stage OU, following which we'll be deploying a second stack set as we go further. But before we do, let me just show you that the setup. So like I was talking about previously, we had the architecture where we had like a root organization unit, a prod organization unit, staging OU, and a central backup OU. If we go to my AWS account, my management account, we see that I have set up a very similar architecture to the diagram. So we have a central backup OU, a prod OU, and a staging OU. For the simplicity of today's demo, I'm just putting like one AWS account in each of these organization unit, but we can have multiple AWS account in multiple regions. And this particular demo would be the same. It will not be any different. And let's see, let's go back. All right. So at this part, what I'm really trying to go back to is those 5 steps. The first step being is just opting into AWS service, and we'll go through how that really works. Then after that would be just setting up the IAM role, the KMS key, and the backup wall for our staging and our prod OU. Post which we will be doing the same thing for our central backup OU. We'll be setting up the IAM role, but instead of setting up the backup wall very similar to what we do for the member accounts, we'll set up a backup wall for our central backup account. And we'll obviously have to do the KMS key. All of this I've kind of aggregated and combined it into a single stack set, which is the step number 4. And the 5th step will be us deploying the backup policy into our management account. backup or policy into a management account so that the central backup vaults really know which are resources to really start backing up and the frequency and all of that. Um, let's continue with the demo. Okay, back. Okay. So let's do the first step, right? The first step being is opting into AWS backup service, especially the cross region and cross account management features. So in order to do that, what we have to do is just go to AWS backup, and on the left tab, you see there is the settings section. So if we look at my account, you look at that, there is settings. All you have to do is click on settings, and once you do that, you just have to scroll down until you see the cross account management. And as you see that at the start of the demo, all of these are turned off for my management account. And I'm just simply going to go to the console and click on turn on, and that is it. It is as simple as that, and we have completed our first step. We just have to go to the console, to the management account, go to the settings, and click on all these buttons. These three buttons that will help us turn on the backup policy, the cross account monitoring, and the cross account backup feature. After that, what we need to do is we just need to deploy the first stack set, which helps AWS backup service assume the IAM role for the stage and the prod OU. But before I show you guys that step, let me just quickly go to my organizations. And if you look at my organizations, which is again on the tab on the left, we have two features there. One is called cross account monitoring. The second one is called backup policy. Since we haven't deployed our automated backup service as of yet, we see that in the backup policy section, we have nothing. It's completely empty. And such is the case with the cross account monitoring as well. What we will see at the end of the demo is once you have deployed our entire automated centralized backup architecture, all of these sections will be pre-filled, and we'll wait until that to see that part of the episode. But moving forward, like if I go to the second step, so this is us completing the first step. If I reiterate, the first step was just going to AWS backup services. There's a settings section. You click on the settings section, scroll down, and then there are these three features. You just have to turn them on, and then you're pretty much done with the first step. The second step is where what we are really trying to do is we are trying to implement an IAM role. Before I proceed further, what this process, like the second step, can be combined with the third step into a singular stack template. And this is what we do in the fourth step. Instead of deploying two stack sets, we are just deploying one stack set. What it does is it deploys the IAM role first, then the KMS key, and then the backup vault. But for the simplicity of today's demo, I'll first be trying to deploy just the IAM role so that everybody in our audience today really knows how to do that. And then we'll keep going layer deeper and we'll get more technical as we go along today's episode. So what I have here is I have my IAM role. This is the CloudFormation template where I'm trying to deploy the IAM role to my production and my staging OU. As you can see that this IAM role has certain parameters. The two parameters being is p tag key 1 and p tag value 1. These parameters, I've already set certain default values for these parameters, but these parameters really help us set up that cross account backup for all of these OUs. And these parameters help AWS to understand how these different resources are attacked and how they're associated with each other. And that's kind of like the superpower, I would say, of parameters. And we'll see how actually parameters are helping us deploy this entire integrated structure, although we are deploying different individual stack sets and stacks. So if I go through this, here, as you can see, going back to the parameter section, we have created something called parameter groups. And then here I have defined three parameters, which is the cross account backup role, the key, and the value. I've also set up certain default for the purpose of this demo, just to speed up the demo. But as a customer, whenever you're using these templates, you can create your own tags, and the templates would fairly work as they're supposed to. But if I continue moving on, this is what we're really going to deploy first. We're going to deploy this IAM role, which has these parameters that help us. This IAM role not only helps AWS service assume the roles to deploy its services, but also helps the entire centralized backup to know which of these OUs have that particular permission. Now, moving on, if I go to my second stack set, so this was my first stack set, which was just deploying the IAM roles to my staging and prod OU. The second stack set is us deploying the KMS key and the backup vault for these member accounts, which is my staging and prod OU. Now, it follows a similar format to the previous template that we have seen. There are the same parameters that we're using. We are using the cross-account backup role parameter, which is helping AWS track, or especially AWS backup track, okay, which IAM roles are backed up to which ones and how this mapping is actually working out. But we also have like certain other parameters such as the backup key alias, as well as the backup key, the member backup vault name. These will be again important parameters for us to remember as we move along our episode, because they will be the one that are responsible to that they're the one that we have to tag to our AWS backup or policy, as well as our central backup. So we'll see how all of these like really connect with each other as we move through the episode. But these parameters again are very similar to the ones we have. There are also organization ID. I'll help walk you guys through like how we find the value of all of these parameters. But most of the parameters, as you can see, are defaults that I've created that feel free to change it according to your use case. But now if I move on, yeah, I guess this is where, okay. So now what I've done is the first step we have completed, which is just going through AWS backup service, switching on the features. Now the second step, right, which is coming to StackSet and deploying the IAM row and then the StackSets with the KMS key and the backup vault in our prod and stage OU. And we will see that happen in the coming steps. But before I use StackSets, what I try to do is I try to enable trust to AWS organization, because I'm planning to use the service managed model of StackSets instead of self-managed. We do have a lot of episodes talking about what is the difference between self-managed and service-managed. We'll be not talking about it today, but for everyone's information, we are using the service-managed because it helps us deploy these particular StackSets automatically to organizations units, as well as helps us use the auto deploy feature, which we'll be learning again as we move along this episode. So I just come to StackSets, which is, as you can see on CloudFormation StackSets, I have nothing created on my management account. I have given access to AWS organizations through my console. And once I've done that, what I'm doing is I'm trying to create a StackSet. All I have to do is click on this red button on the right, and then I'm using the service manage model. I'm uploading my first stack template, which is the IAM roles, something that we saw a few minutes ago. And I am just giving certain information like setting up the StackSet name, which is here in this case, it's disaster recovery IAM role. I'm also giving some description of like what this StackSet does. It creates an IAM role, which for my prod and stage OU. And finally, the parameters, something that we were talking about. These are again parameters that I've had set up default values for in my code. But feel free to change these parameters because they are what helps you configure different resource types. So you can deploy the same architecture in the same OU, but with different configuration properties in your parameters, and all of that would work completely differently. And there are very, very interesting complex use cases. But for today's episode, we'll keep it very simple. We just keep like minimum parameters and maximum impact. If I continue on, if I move on, I see that I'm trying to deploy this StackSets into my organization unit. So to do that, I go back to my AWS organizations page, and then I extract these values from the organization page. So if you look at here, I'm just clicking on the staging OU, the information there, just pasting it. And what it will do is for this particular StackSet, we will not be using the auto deploy feature, but we'll be disabling the auto deploy, and I'll be talking about why we do that in a few moments. But using the service managed model is very, very powerful if you have a lot of AWS organizations, and if there are like certain roles and policies that you want to auto deploy for AWS accounts, new AWS accounts when they're added to an OU. And this is like a super interesting feature. So what we do is like we deploy, we follow through the steps, and we hit OK. And what CloudFormation StackSets does is it starts running the StackSets and starts deploying different stack instances to the member accounts. As you can see here, we have our staging account and our production account. And StackSet, what it does, it deploys that IAM role into these two accounts. What I'm doing after this is I'm now trying to set up the second StackSet. The first StackSet, what it did was it just sets up the IAM role for my stage and prod OU. But the second StackSet, what it does, it helps me set up my KMS key as well as my backup vault to these particular two OUs, production and staging. And these backup vault and KMS keys, what will help AWS to as a whole to like map and manage all of your information. It will also provide that layer of security. So any information that are being backed up into your local AWS backup vault will be backed up to the central vault, and all of that mapping will happen as we set up the organization backup policy. But if we move on, we can see, okay, here is some descriptions that I've added. I've gone, and now we go back to the same parameters. Now, what is interesting at this point is that if you look at the parameters, some of the parameters are repeated. So, for example, enter the name of the backup IAM role. If we go a few steps before here, the name is backup role. And you will see that we have fairly kept that name consistent. And that is what is really helping AWS on behind the scene to set up this kind of a disaster recovery, and mapping all of those resources to those IAM rules, which are then deployed into your organization units and your accounts and so on and so forth. Now, if I go back to my to my second stack set, which is the KMS key and the backup vault for my prod and staging OU. Give me a second. Okay, so the backup again, the IMS backup IAM role, as you can see, is the same. The same would be the case for the key and the value. They are kind of located below. But if we look at the KMS key, the KMS key alias, again, feel free to like change these names according to your own convenience. But these are the names which are like helping really track the different assets within each AWS account and region. The one place where if you're just following the demo word by word and you're not planning to change any of it, the demo, we have this thing called organization ID, right? And this is where what this particular piece of parameter is doing is that it is helping the entire architecture understand which AWS organizations is this entire architecture deployed at. So in for this case, we'll have to go to organization ID, that is the information on the left panel for in our management account, and just place that paste that information. And what it does, it helps define and if we go back to the main slide all the way there, it basically says that, okay, here is the AWS organization that I have. I want all of this that I'm deploying in steps to be mapped to this AWS organization. And that's what the parameter really does and in this particular use case. And then, let's see. We are back here. We collected that information. We paste it here. And then we follow the same steps, right? We go to our organization unit. Here, I'm trying to deploy it to my prod OU and my staging OU. So the first step was just going to backup services. Second step was deploying the IAM roles in my prod and staging OU. The third step is deploying the KMS key and the backup vault into my prod and my staging OU. And this after this step, we're pretty much done with the prod and staging OU. And now we just move directly to the central backup OU. And we'll see that all of in these steps that fairly it's the same process. I've just combined both of the first stack set, the IAM role and the KMS key backup vault stack set into one singular stack set, just changing a few configuration property that then helps us deploy the same type of stack sets for our central backup OU. Moving on, if I go fast, there you go. We have deployed these two stack sets. These are done. Now comes the third one, which is our central backup account. Now, in this again, if we go through, if we read this template, we would see that the parameters are fairly the same. The only difference that we have in parameters value is the central backup vault value, and this is the only thing that will actually change in terms of executing this line of code. But if you go layer deeper, you can see in the resources section, the property types is what is helping CloudFormation and AWS really map each of these individual resources to this backup policy. Let's go front. Now, before we move to the third step, which is deploying that same deploying the IAM role, the KMS key, and the backup vault for my central backup OU, I just want to show that, okay, in this screen, so far we have just deployed two stack sets, the IAM role stack sets and the KMS, but these are done for the prod and staging OU. Now, proceeding further, I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm going to use my the central backup account YAML code, and I'm just going to paste it. Here I see this is done. Okay. Oops. Okay. So Yes. So this is again the parameter configuration for the central backup stack sets, the third stack sets that we're deploying. And as you can see that again, going back to the parameters, we see that the IAM role name is the same. Such is the case with the tag key and the tag value as well. The only thing that is actually changing is the backup vault name. If you remember in the previous one, it was vault dash member. Here is vault dash central, and that's again helping in the whole orchestration. The organization ID, very similar to the previous tag set, will go back to AWS organizations and then just copy the information that is available on the left-hand side of the panel under organization ID, and move forward with the process. So I'm just trying to deploy, again, the third stack set, this time to my central backup OU instead of my prod and staging OU. And this is the information that I'm copying directly. And once I do that, I take a pause here. So here for this particular step, I'm using auto deploy, and I'm enabling auto deploy for my third stack set. I did not do that for my first two stack set. And the first question comes is like, why am I doing it for the third stack set and not the first two stack set, right? First of all, before we get into that, what is auto deploy? Auto deploy is a very simple functionality from AWS organization, which what it does is that whenever you add a new AWS account to an OU or an organization unit, any sort of configuration or resource properties that had to be deployed to this account that is entering the OU, auto deploy helps do that, right, without any user intervention and whatnot. And CloudFormation really can allow customers to deploy and baseline bootstrap AWS configurations into their new AWS accounts using this feature. So for the third stack set, as we know, anytime any new account is added to our central backup OU, they will need an IAM key. They'll need an IAM role, a KMS key, and then a backup vault. And all of this, the sequencing, all of the deployment is already set up into one particular stack set. So the auto deployment feature perfectly works, right? There is no dependency, there is no inheritance. Everything is defined in this one singular stack set template. But the thing with the first two examples, right, of deploying the same thing with the staging and the prod OU is that when for the IAM role, we could have definitely used auto deployment. But for the second one, the KMS key and the backup vault, the auto deploy function wouldn't really work. Although you can switch it on, what will happen is there'll be a lot of deployment failures because there's a dependency on the IAM role. So until the IAM role is created first within the prod and my staging OU, I cannot really create the KMS key and the backup vault, which are mapping to my IAM role. And this is where whenever you're using our product, you will see that there might be error flags that might be created because of that dependency. So within the first example use case where I had two stack sets, one with the IAM role and then the KMS key, auto deployment did not really make sense for both of the stack sets. Although the first stack set I can definitely use auto deploy, but in this particular example, the third one with the central backup OU, since all of that information, all the resources, the configuration is defined in one template, and there is no dependency between multiple templates, auto deploy like really works perfectly. And then I just wanted to talk about auto deploy for a few minutes before proceeding further with our episode. Moving on, and this is what we do, right? Like once we have our third stack set, which helps set up the central backup vault with the KMS key and the IAM roles for my central backup OU, I just hit next. I wait for the deployment. Once it's created, I can see that in my stack set space, I have the three stack sets that I've deployed: the IAM role, the KMS key, the vault for my member accounts, which is my staging and prod OU, and then the same thing for my central backup account. All of this code again is available in this GitHub link. So feel free to go through the link, read the blog, and follow through this episode once it's published. It's very easy to use the tool, and it's not that complicated when you start using it. The blog and everything is fairly well explained, including the code. Now, finally, we come to the backup policy, right? And this is what is really helping us stitch this architecture. So we have deployed, okay, first of all, we have switched on our AWS backup features. Then we have deployed these three stack sets. The stack sets have IAM roles, KMS key, backup vault. But how does all of this tie together, right? Like, what is that one piece of information, which is backup as a code, right? Backup policy as a code. Like, what is that policy as a code that is helping us tie this entire architecture together, right? And how does AWS backup know? Like, how frequently should I back up these resources that are deployed into the prod and the staging OU? How do I now set up all of these information, right? And that is what the backup policy really does. Now, if you look at the backup policy, so what we're really trying to do with this policy here is that I'm trying to set up two type of backup policies. As you can see, if you look at the code, there is something called backup scheduler And there's backup scheduler 1 and there's backup scheduler 2. This is under the cross account backup role under parameters. So in within the scheduler, if you look at the default values, both of these values are significantly different. And what they're really trying to do, or what I'm trying to do with this demo, is that I'm trying to show that we can set up different type of backup policies. So if, let's say, if you want to have 3 4 multiple policies, you can just add it to this piece of code, and just follow the same syntax, and the things should actually really work like that. And within this backup policy, not only we are trying to define the frequency of how frequently these cron jobs should be taken, but also we are defining things like the window, like how many days should this backup be available, after how many days should we delete this backup, all of that information. Um, One again, going back to the parameters, we see that we have like the vault member and all of that. And then here, going back to, okay, the resource types, something that we talked about in key concepts, and this is what we are trying to do, is that we're trying to create a custom resource, which is, these are basically Lambda resources, and that is helping CloudFormation define all of these configuration properties. So as you can see on your screen right now, so you have like the start backup window minutes. So it starts every 60 minutes. And there's the backup window time, the how many days after which it needs to be deleted. So you can change all of these content of your policy in the particular code itself. And all of that is being consumed as a custom resource, going back to the whole registry concept that we were talking about a few slides earlier. Now, if I move through today's episode, now let us try to deploy this. So now we did that with StackSets. So we deploy the 3 StackSets. Now we go to Stacks. And all of this is happening on my management account. I do not have to go to the member accounts or the member OUs. I can do all of this from my management account itself. So I'm just uploading my stack, which is the backup policy. And now if I go hit next, I see that all my parameters are already pre-filled, right? So these are, again, values that I can change. I have kind of set up the default parameters, but again, you can clearly change these parameters in the console while you're deploying, and the CloudFormation template, all those parameters will be updated during deployment. Now, 2 important parameters that I do want to point out here is the backup tag key1 and the backup tag value1. What the key1 and key1, key2, value1, value2, what they're really doing is key1 and value1 is tagging to the backup scheduler1, and key2 and value2 is mapping to backup scheduler2. When we go to the last step of this episode, which is just doing our resources, these 2 components will really make sense. So let's just keep that at the top of our mind. But to finally really solve the problem of backup, we need to go to our backup OU into member accounts where the backup vaults have been created, and we have to get the central backup vault on the information. And that is what we try to do in the coming minutes. So we just go to the okay. So okay. And okay, so this is where we log into the organization, so the central backup, and we can see that when we look at the stack over here, you have the central backup vault. You click on that, and you can find the vault and information from here. And then from here, all we have to do is we have to create the stack again. I'm just following the process again, and then I just add that information that I already had. I deploy my policy, and it's created, and that's pretty much it. Like, and that's it. Like, our architecture is set up, our central backup policy is set up, everything is set up, right? But how do you now validate it? Like, okay, we followed all this process, we all did all of this, but how do we know that it actually worked, right? So the first thing we do is we go back to the AWS backup service into our management account. And if we go to the backup policy, which was initially at the start of the demo empty, right? Here we have now deployed 2 policies in accordance with the all policy that we had. And here, if we click on each of these policies, we can see the values, the properties of these policies. They are exactly what we had defined in the all policy YAML template in the previous steps. And this is what I'm really trying to walk through. But if we look at now, our still cross-account monitoring is empty. So we have deployed our policy, but what about cross-account monitoring? Where is the monitoring happening? And in order to do that, what I've done is I've just added a little spice to this demo. I have just create. I'm just what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to deploy an infrastructure, right? And in this infrastructure, I'm just trying to create an EC2 instance within my prod and staging OU, and I'm using the parameters that were defined in the backup policy, the backup tag key one and value one and all of that. And I'm using those to really map it, right? Um, and that is what we see here. We try to do the mapping and all of that. The project, and as you can see, if we go further, these are the values that were very synonymous to the backup policy that I had. And now once I deploy all of this, the deployment happens, and all I have to do is now go to AWS backup an hour later once the deployment happens, and I can see that all the cross account monitoring is happening for the EC2 instances that are deployed in my prod OU and my staging OU. And that is it. This is the part of the demo. I hope everyone had fun, and I hope you guys learned something new. Let's move on to part three since we are almost about time. So the third part, again, before I come to the last piece, which is like the 2020 launches we have had so far for CloudFormation CDK and Cloud Control API. I just want to talk upon how easy it was to set up disaster recovery. I hope you guys felt the same while doing it. It was just 5 steps. We can combine it into 3 steps, 2 steps, but it is that simple, right? You can use these templates which are available in our GitHub and do something similar for your company, your AWS account, or you can just play around with our tools. And I hope you guys had fun through our demo today. Just coming to the 2020 launches, we have launched a lot of things, and I'll have my colleague paste a lot of these what's new posts that we have already published in our social media. But let me talk a few top items. So we have launched something called account level targeting for StackSets. So within the service managed model, previously customers, all you can do is you can deploy a StackSet to an entire organization unit, and you cannot really select a different collection of accounts within OU. And account level targeting allows that flexibility to our customers. So you can now select like different pools of accounts from an organization unit to not only create and deploy StackSet, but also skip deployment of StackSets using account level targeting. We have also expanded our service, the StackSet service, to Jakarta. And that was a great victory for us, especially for our customers in the Jakarta, Indonesia region. CloudFormation also today supports event notification using Event Bridge, and that is something that a lot of our customers have been asking for. So today, any sort of CloudFormation resources, when they're created, when all those resources have drifted, or there's a status change, you can get those event notification directly into your Amazon Event Bridge and create some sort of an automated logging systems with our tools. And this brings me to another interesting feature that we recently launched, which is our language extension. A lot of our customers have been requesting like improvements to our languages, and the language extension really helps us deploy these improvements at a higher velocity. I will be talking about a GitHub repo which we have launched, but within the extension, not only we launched the language extension transform, but we also launched 3 features with this transform. So we now support length function. We can help you convert your JSON to strings, as well as like provide intrinsic and pseudo parameters references, both for updated and deletion policies. And the final launch from CloudFormation that we are super excited was the CDK construct preview. This just happened, I believe, a few months ago. So customers, what they really wanted to do was they wanted to track or they wanted to like abstract all of the resources that were created using CDK but there was CloudFormation under the hood, and they wanted to easily associate these stack resources to their CDK construct. And that's what like the concept review really helps our customer achieve. Within the Cloud Control API space, we are now supporting AWS private link support. My colleague will share a blog post with you, which will help you get started on not only on Cloud Control API, but on the support for AWS private link. The last 2 things that I'm really passionate about and I do want to talk about is our public GitHub repos. So today, CloudFormation, we have 2 public GitHub repos that we are actively working and engaging with our public customers. So the first GitHub repo is our language one. So we would love to hear from you guys about any sort of like template language features that you believe would help ease your entire working with our product. And we'd love to hear about how, if you have any sort of recommendation and features with just regards to improving our CloudFormation language. And the second public roadmap is the coverage roadmap about like the upcoming coverage support for CloudFormation. So if you have any questions about resource types that CloudFormation will support, any bugs, any improvements that you want to recommend, just go to our GitHub repo. We're actively tracking it. We have a lot of support and a lot of engagement in these public roadmaps. So excited to see you all there with interesting ideas that you guys have. And that's pretty much it for today's show. I hope all of you all had fun. Thank you for tuning in and listening to us for so long. Any Q&A, Stephen?
Thanks, Parjat. There was a great session, lots of information. We've kind of hit up at time. So if we haven't answered your questions today, please head over to repost.aws, where one of our experts can provide you with an answer to your question, and it could become a topic in one of our future shows. If you have feedback for us, please check the chat box on the right for a link to the survey, or you can email us at AWS Supports You at Amazon.com. We want to hear from you. Tell us what else you would like to see us in the show. Join us next Monday, the 31st of October, where we'll be answering your repost questions on management and governance. Parjat, again, thank you very much. A lot of great content today.
Oh, no. Thank you, Stephen, for having us in the episode, and excited to be here again talking about interesting new features next time.